Welcome to Dr. Mensch, the radio show that takes a real, compassionate look at mental health from A to Z. Join child and adolescent psychiatrist Dr. Gil Lichtshein each week as we explore topics that matter: autism, ADHD, anxiety, depression, OCD, schizophrenia, behavioral challenges, neurodevelopmental disorders, and more. No stigma, no judgment. Just honest conversations, new therapies, breakthrough treatments, and real solutions for real people. Mental health is not a weakness. It's a treatable medical condition, and help is available. Join the conversation now by calling the studio at 888-994-4995, Studio A. This is Dr. Mensch, where hope and healing begin.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Dr. Gil Lichtshein, aka Dr. Mensch, from sunny and warm South Florida on a beautiful Monday, late afternoon, early evening. Perfect and most popular time to be in South Florida, and this is the time of year where we feel so fortunate as to why we live here. I'm a board-certified child, adolescent, adult psychiatrist, where my primary office is located in Boca Raton at 7100 West Camino Real, Suite 404. Today, I'm going to kind of pivot a little bit and not really talk about any specific, psychiatric disorders or mental health issues or any topic about medication, or I'm not going to discuss, like a couple of weeks ago, I had Dave Iacovetti on as a guest to talk about the book that we co-wrote. Today I'm actually going to talk about the holiday season and kind of what kind of challenges that it could contribute and result in people who especially have mental health issues or are on meds, and that between Christmas and New Year's, while the holiday parties and then New Year's being a celebratory holiday where you go out and drink and revel and party, well, there's a lot potential pitfalls for that. And I was just the last 2 weeks in Spain, and this Christmas spirit is not just an American thing. When I was in Barcelona and then in Mallorca, the streets were lit up at night. You have this festive atmosphere. You go to stores, restaurants, you just walk the streets, and you kind of see the holiday atmosphere and the kind of festivities that take place. You have these Christmas markets, and people are just kind of in a great jolly mood. Spanish culture is very interesting too, in terms of it's very food oriented, and wine is a big part of eating, and so when I go to Spain, and I personally have a timeshare in Mallorca, so I try to go once a year to Spain, and I really enjoy the country and enjoy the food. But when I'm there, I kind of partake in some of the customs of the locals. So I go out to dinner in Barcelona, I'll go to a steakhouse or a tapas restaurant, and I'll have a glass or two, maybe a bottle of wine with dinner over a few hours. That's kind of like the I don't say accepted thing, but that's kind of what Spaniards do. And when you go to a restaurant anywhere in a major city in Spain, Madrid, Barcelona, Sevilla, you name it, and you'll see a lot of Spaniards, or they come to dinner, and they often will eat late. So by American standards, when we're used to eating dinner at 6, 7 p.m., Spaniards are still doing their siesta. For them, dinner is like 9, 10 p.m. But you go to a restaurant and you'll see tables with bottles of wine, because that's kind of the custom. Whereas here in America, again, maybe we're a little bit more prudish, and have more kind of limits and limitations when it comes to that. Certainly would also say with smoking, here where there's a lot more restrictions when it comes to, say, like smoking, In Spain, I'm not saying there aren't, but it's certainly not as in your face like it is here in the U.S. So in the U.S., when I go out to eat, I don't necessarily always see tables where there's a bottle, 2 bottles, 3 bottles of wine just being polished off by a group of people like you do in Spain. And again, America tends to be a little bit more prudish when it comes to these matters. But nonetheless, when it comes to the holidays, a lot of people, whether personally or through their place of employment, have holiday parties. Again, whether it's catered in the office setting or at a restaurant, and part of the festivities and the holiday atmosphere often involve alcohol. And I'm not here to preach or to advocate for, abolition of drinking, or back in the, when the 19th Amendment was, the 18th Amendment was passed and you had prohibition. I'm not talking about that, but alcohol is kind of an interesting drug, and it's what it is. It is a drug. Even though people will think, oh, it's something you drink, but nonetheless, alcohol does have pharmacological effects no different than any prescription drug that we're taking, or even over-the-counter medication. So in that respect, alcohol is a drug that has medicinal effects. And even though perhaps in Europe, wine, alcohol really in Europe, mainly in the form of wine, is looked at differently than maybe in the United States. Nonetheless, alcohol can have some serious, issues and really affect people differently. And so, especially in the holidays, and especially with New Year's, where really the focus on New Year's is, and you're going out, you're celebrating the upcoming New Year, and you go to parties, and what do they have at parties? Alcohol. I just try to emphasize to people, especially ones with mental health issues, is really being mindful of how much alcohol you have. And, again, whether you want to argue that alcohol, can be a good thing in moderation, and there's certainly data that alcohol, especially red wine, for example, can protect against heart disease, and we do have no data from Europe that there are lower rates of certain illnesses in Europe, especially like in countries where there's a big focus on wine, such as Italy, France, and Spain. But nonetheless, again, with a lot of things, with moderation, alcohol, I'm not going to say it's not toxic, but perhaps may have some beneficial effects. But when the use of alcohol gets a little out of hand, that's when problems arise. And in the holiday season, when things are, people are supposedly joyful and in a celebratory mood, and you have all these different parties, and again emphasizing with New Year's, where it's like kind of one huge party, often in kind of a party atmosphere. What will they serve? I mean, they're going to serve water, they're going to serve soda, they're going to serve orange juice, but I mean, imagine going to a New Year's Eve party and you're like, okay, I'm just going to drink water. Now, the expectation is you're going to go to a New Year's Eve party and you're going to have, a few beers, a cocktail, wine, or whatever alcoholic beverages are being served. You're not, the expectation is you're not going to a New Year's Eve party to get loaded up on Coke Zero or Sprite or apple juice. And so these are also circumstances and occasions where one could kind of lose control and kind of get into trouble. And alcohol is an interesting drug, and I would say that colloquially I would say alcohol is a depressant. It modulates a certain inhibitory neurochemical in the brain called GABA, kind of similar to a class of drugs called benzodiazepines, such as Xanax or Klonopin or Valium. And so, yeah, in the immediate like effects of alcohol, it could kind of have an anti-anxiety and calming and kind of like a tranquilizing effect. And alcohol has even been used as a antiseptic, kind of an anesthetic. In the days before we had anesthesia, when you had surgeries performed, especially like in open field, like in wars, if they didn't have ether or chloroform, alcohol was often used because it could kind of help, modulate pain. Like I said, it's a good antiseptic, so it could sterilize, equipment. And so, there is some medical uses of alcohol, but it's when alcohol starts being used in excess that its beneficial effects are outweighed by its negative effects. And I'm sure I don't have to tell a lot of folks out there about what it's like to be intoxicated and hungover or experience alcohol poisoning, but it's not fun. The day after being drunk or intoxicated or inebriated is not fun either. And the other thing too, at least in my practice, is I have overwhelming majority of my patients taking some type of psychotropic medications, and so using this, let's say, holiday season, you want to say month period of time, whether it's the whole month of December or the last 2 weeks of the month, or some would say even from Thanksgiving, 5 weeks of reveling, is having to be mindful of how much alcohol you take in, especially if you are on psychotropic medications, because alcohol, again, as I said before, it kind of is looked as a depressant or a downer, if you want to say. Where, although in the short term, you drink and you feel good, and again, yes, I'm not going to deny that in the short term, alcohol can kind of have an uplifting effect on your mood, make you feel giddy and happy and uninhibited, but that also could lead you to be more impulsive and kind of do certain things that perhaps you wouldn't do when you're more in control of your impulses and inhibitions. And then the whole concern also is, more long-term effects of ongoing alcohol use and its overall effects on your body, not just on your mind, but on other organs of your body. So this is where there's kind of like a fine line about trying to, maintain control of your drinking over this, period of time where, we're reveling and rejoicing and having a good time and enjoying the company of friends and family. Because I mentioned in a previous show that the holiday season could also be a time, tough time or more difficult time for certain people, and that you don't want to. I don't want to use the word self-medicate, but you don't want to try to drown out your sorrows or or a difficult time by numbing them, so to speak, with alcohol. Even though sometimes it can be very tempting, and alcohol is all around us. Now, again, I'm not trying to preach any agenda here. I'm not here trying to promote prohibition or raising the drinking age. Again, in Europe, for example, I believe in most, if not all, European countries, the drinking age is 18. So, whereas here, I remember growing up that there were still some states that the drinking age was 18, and then gradually, let's say by the late 70s, I remember growing up in Chicago where I remember as far back as I can remember, the drinking age in Illinois was 21, but I remember in Wisconsin, I believe it was 18 or 19, and I remember that I'm going to say maybe in the late 70s. At that point, I'm like 11, 12, 13 years old, and I remember that the Wisconsin legislature voted to change the drinking age to 21. And I remember, like the night before the law went into effect, all these teenagers from Chicago, driving, 75 miles to the Wisconsin border so they could find a bar or a liquor store across the border so they can have their one last legal drink before they can't. Now again, I'm not here to advocate raising the drinking age, lowering the drinking age. I'm not here to advocate for let's go back to the Volstead Act and let's have congressional laws to prohibit the sale and the importation and of alcohol, because again, you go back in history, that was a time of people still were drinking, you still could get it, and it led into bootlegging and some of the organized crime kind of focused on alcohol. So I'm not here to advocate any political agenda, but more of talking about people being more mindful and trying to maintain some sort of self-control and not let having a good time kind of cloud your judgment, because you can have a good time, an enjoyable time, without getting drunk or getting buzzed or blitzed or whatever word you want to use. And alcohol is one of those readily accessible drug that, at least if you're 21 years old and can show, or I guess if you're under 21 and have a fake ID that looks really real, it's very easy to get beer, vodka, wine, or any type of alcohol, probably, more so than other drugs. You can go to a liquor store, grocery store, a convenience store and get whatever you want, and no one's going to tell you, I'm sorry, you can't buy this or buy that. If you have the funds and you're hosting a party, you want to buy a whole case of scotch, you can. On that note, we're going to take a brief commercial break and we'll be back momentarily.
What happens when the mind of a healer crosses over into the darkness of the human soul? From authors David Icovetti, Dr. Gil Lichtshein, and Yolanda DeLuca comes a chilling psychological thriller, Dr. Mensch, A Prescription for Evil. This gripping novel follows a respected Boca Raton psychiatrist who secretly descends into madness, transforming into a modern-day king of the underworld. Inspired by true events and Dr. Gil's childhood connection to a mob family, this story blurs the line between sanity and evil, genius and destruction. Unforgettable, disturbing, impossible to put down. Get your copy today on Amazon.com. Dr. Mensch, A Prescription for Evil, a 2020 psychological crime thriller. You're listening to Dr. Mensch with child and adolescent psychiatrist Dr. Gil Lichtshein. For a copy of his powerful new book, Dr. Mensch's Prescription for Evil, visit Amazon.com. For more information or to schedule a consultation, contact Dr. Gil directly at 561-300-4052 or visit docgil.com. Now, let's get back to the show.
Welcome back, everybody. Dr. Gil Lichtshein, aka Dr. Mensch here, talking about, pontificating, whatever word you want to use about the holiday season and trying to maintain some sort of self-control when it comes to reveling and drinking. And I was saying about alcohol being readily accessible. I was saying, like, if I wanted to go to a liquor store and I was hosting a party and I wanted to buy a case of Macallan 18, no store employee at ABC Liquors or any liquor store I go to is probably going to tell me, sorry, young man, or in my case, old man, you can't buy this, it's too much. They're going to be like, show me the money, pay the bill, and off I go. So, alcohol is readily available, easily accessible. So it makes it for, something that just a lot of people is going to want to partake in. And especially if you are suffering from any type of, serious mental health issues like depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, the prospects of drinking, maybe in the short term, seems great. Maybe it might make you feel good, especially if you've had a bad day or a bad run of a few weeks. But the problem is that when you're prescribed psychotropic meds, again, it doesn't matter whether it's antidepressants, antipsychotics, mood stabilizers, drinking and being on psychotropic meds can sometimes be a problem. And I have a lot of my patients who will often ask me, like, can I drink if I'm taking Prozac or I'm taking lithium or if I'm taking Abilify? And I'm like, well, define what you mean, because, when you go to the pharmacy and you get your bottle with your meds, it's going to say, like, don't drink or or warning, do not consume any alcohol. And again, I always try to be clear with my patients and saying, hey, if you go out to dinner and you have a glass of wine, that's one thing. But going to a party, getting blitzed or plastered on, I had like two bottles of wine and a few mixed drinks and stuff like that. That is a lot different than simply, I had a nice time at a Christmas party, great company, great food, some good, I had a glass of great wine or I had a beer. Okay, fine, great. But this whole month has been full of party after party after party, and I've been getting drunk, night after night. That's, a little bit of a problem, and both a little bit of a problem mentally, but also it could also wreak havoc on your body physically. So I try to give a whole kind of comprehensive, outlook on what alcohol does. And I have the, I guess, advantage of seeing patients who, let's say, have been drinking for years and years and years, and then maybe they've finally gotten sober, but the long-term effects of their drinking has finally caught up with them, whether it's killed their liver or it's killed their brain or done some other damage to their body, whether physically or mentally. So again, I'm not opposed to alcohol. There's a time and place. I mean, certainly you get great news. You getting married, you have a baby, some big event in your life, and you want to celebrate by going out with your friends and having a drink. That's one thing, but going to parties day after day, let's say over the course of the month for the holidays, and using that as an opportunity to get drunk, that's something to kind of really be mindful of, especially if you are taking psychotropic medications, and that also goes true for if you're taking other meds. And again, that's beyond my area of expertise, but I can imagine if you're taking seizure medications, you're on insulin, or you're taking medicine for high blood pressure or high cholesterol, excessive drinking is probably not beneficial for your blood pressure. Certainly not beneficial if you have a seizure disorder, epilepsy, and you're starting to drink, because you come off alcohol and that could cause seizures. So again, you got to take into account your mental health and physical health, and look at what impact drinking can have on you, especially again during this holiday season. Again, I'm not trying to be a party pooper or Debbie Downer. I think everybody has a right to enjoy themselves, enjoy what the holiday season is supposed to bring about, a sense of camaraderie, family, being with friends, celebrating, being thankful for life and what you have and what you've attained and achieved, but at the same time, trying to do so with some modicum of self-control. Because again, one of the things that people say what they like about having a couple of drinks is it kind of makes them feel good, less inhibited. But sometimes when our guardrails are down, that is when it can lead us to a lot of problems. And well, again, look at, for example, drunk driving. Your judgment's impaired. You think you're in control. You're not. Get behind the wheel of a car and boom, either get into an accident, hurt yourself, or hurt somebody else. And then think of the legal ramifications. You get your license revoked or suspended. You can't drive. You can't. So, in the end, you got to kind of think: is it really worth it? So, really, the take-home message I'm trying to send is more of, be responsible. Again, this applies to a lot of things in life. Just being responsible. Part of being an adult is, okay, you're an adult, you're a grown-up, act like a grown-up, make grown-up decisions, take responsibility for your actions, be accountable for what your choices and the consequences of your choices. So if you want to partake in some celebration and be in a celebratory mood and involve alcohol intake, then be mindful of what that means, make some contingencies. One thing I could never understand is like these athletes who would drink and then get into a car, drive and kill somebody. Like, why don't they hire an Uber driver? They have plenty of money. They have the financial resources. So just make the contingencies, take into account of the choices you're making, and this will make a much better and celebratory holiday season. So I appreciate everybody listening to this. Again, kind of going a little bit off topic or taking a little different direction today. I just want to wish everybody who celebrates Christmas Merry Christmas. I just finished celebrating Hanukkah, so I want to wish everybody out there who celebrated Hanukkah, wish they all had a great, happy Hanukkah. And again, this is Dr. Gil Lichtshein, aka Dr. Mensch. I'll be back next Monday, and I'll have a special guest, and I look forward to my next show next week. But again, Merry Christmas to everybody who celebrates. Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us for Dr. Mensch with Dr. Gil Lichtshein, helping you navigate the world of mental health with clarity and care. If you or someone you love needs support, you're not alone. Treatment works and recovery is possible. To schedule a consultation or discuss non-medication therapies, personalized treatment plans, or psychiatric care, contact Dr. Gil directly at 561-300-4052 or visit docgil.com. You can catch us each week on South Florida Oldies Radio and streaming across all social platforms.